Sometimes in life, the events that seem to be the hardest to accept also make us reflect on how lucky we actually are and were. Plenty of times we realize that to love so hard means that when you love, that physical presence means that pain and grief will try to sabotage the good memories. This week, many are feeling grief and pain over the loss of Dr. Jerry. However, in that grief and pain are thousands of reminders that we were lucky and privileged to have known Dr. Gerald Haydel. If ever I had a second set of parents to complement my own loving parents, there is no doubt that Dr. Jerry was that second tier of dad in my life. As early as my mind will let me go back, I still have a mind picture with Dr. Jerry in it. The Haydels lived across the street from our home on Austin Drive. We lived at 19 Austin Drive, and Dr. Jerry, Miss Jean, and their family lived at 22 Austin Drive. Those days were phenomenal. As a child, I got to hang out with a group of Mulberry kids that were as close to Mayberry as you can get. All of us non-Haydel kids loved to visit the Haydel house. They had ducks, dogs, and plenty of kids to clown around with. One of the ducks was a greenhead named Holy because of a hole in his webbed foot. Their chocolate lab was named Sugarfoot, and the black lab, Amanda. As a matter of fact, our family dog, Snoopy, that's original, was an offspring of Amanda. The neighborhood gatherings were fun and genuine. The football games were epic. Sometimes my dad and Dr. Jerry came out and played quarterback for our teams. We would gather on the side lot of Dr. Jerry's, and it was war. Tackle football as far back as I can remember. And Dr. Jerry would stitch many of us up right there on the spot.
How many stitches he put in my head? He put a lot of stitches in my head.
As I look at that lot today, it looks so much smaller, but it was the game and the camaraderie that was big. To put it quite simply, Dr. Jerry allowed us to be, quite frankly, boys. When Doc and my dad were at work, they both knew that my mom and Miss Jean would protect us. Mom and Miss Jean graduated together at Mount Carmel. They played on the same parish championship basketball team. There was not a day that went by that I did not have some form of communication with someone in the Haydel family. Growing up, one of their sons, Mike, and I did everything together. We once built a large tree house in that very big willow behind the Haydel house. It allowed us to hear and see all the neighbors and what they were up to. The Barlows to the back left, Mr. Wilson in the middle, and then the Zarangs just to the right. We could actually see Mr. Wilson singing to his tomatoes. I'm serious. Don't laugh. They were some of the biggest tomatoes I have ever seen. You get the point. Dr. Jerry's house was the hub. Austin Drive forged many lifelong friendships, and 22 Austin Drive was a big part of that. How many times did Mom or Dad ask me where I was going, and I would say, Dr. Jerry's house? They were okay with that, always. I am sure that story resonates with plenty of you watching this editorial. All the kids, all the friends, enjoying a great time on Austin Drive. Then the bombshell heard across the neighborhood. The Haydels were moving. The small home was not enough for all those children. I can remember moping around thinking that I've just lost my best friend. That is, until Mom and Dad reminded me that they only are moving a few pedals of the bicycle down the road into the old Acosta house. Ooh, dodged a bullet on that one. And what a place that house became for even more people to gather. There was a barn, a tennis court, and plenty of space to lounge around. Heck, they had a game room with foosball. Are you kidding me? They had a pool table in the back. They had the biggest barbecue pit that I have ever seen. Dr. Jerry even had a phone on the back porch so he could answer the callbacks from the answering service when he was on call. 879-3686. That was the number. The children's phone was 876-1266. It's entrenched in my brain along with so many other memories. There was that fancy TV antenna that he bought so he could catch all the channels. That was secondary to us kids. We used that antenna to access the roof. We had a good time on the roof growing up. We drove mini bikes around the yard. On one occasion, I drove the Honda 70 square in the middle of that cluster of thorns in the back corner of the lot. Dripping with blood, I remember Miss Jean calling Dr. Jerry outside to take a look. I got that classic, "Boy, what the hell happened?" Obviously, I lived to see another day. They had an old antique car that the girls drove around with some of my siblings. Miss Jean was there most of the time, but occasionally Dr. Jerry would pull up in that old station wagon just in time to throw us more footballs at a much bigger football field than we had at Austin Drive. We ran routes in the front yard while Heidi and Carol and Charlene and all their friends, the older girls, were practicing their cheers. Now that was a treat. However, I think that Dr. Jerry actually had more fun playing football with us than we had ourselves. He was a pretty serious doctor, but he sure knew how to have fun. He was, on all accounts, a giant kid at heart. Now that barn, it housed the boat and many of the items that would make their way to the duck camp each and every hunting season. The duck camp in those days was the place to be. The gang that would gather was such a tight-knit group. All had their skills to help out in the cause. And the great thing about the duck camp was that many of those who could not afford to own one of their own were allowed by Dr. Jerry to be a part of that perfect getaway. However, all had to pitch in. They had to do their part with their skills, not monetarily. My first duck was at that camp, but that's not what I remember the most. I recall the pool do gumbo and the many meals that Dr. Jerry would cook and the conversations we had. He loved to cook. It was such a simple but great place to gather and tell a bunch of stories, no matter how exaggerated they were. How many people enjoyed something that Dr. Jerry created? His, if you don't like it, it rodeo in Grand Isle was epic. The characters that went to that rodeo each and every year were all one-of-a-kind individuals who all knew how to laugh and have a good time. Police would bring them from Houma, from 1621 Bayou Black, to Grand Isle. They had an escort. They would take the island by storm. They donned t-shirts and hats signifying that they were part of the team. The Admiral, Dr. Jerry's boat, was always first in line. That camp by the water tower in Grand Isle was not ritzy, but it was perfect. Just this week, Dr. Pat Haydel sent me a picture of my dad's name as the captain of the KP group for that rodeo. KP, to those who don't know, means Kitchen Patrol. Each and every one who made that trip had the most fun and could not wait until the next year to do it again. Our family spent many summer vacations in Grand Isle at the Haydel camp. Those window units were our music, and that elevated toilet was a point of discussion. We nicknamed it the Throne. As we got older, Mike Haydel and yours truly had the pleasure of working on that camp a few times because we worked for Dr. Jerry during the summer. And I'm pretty sure that I recollect I made about $2.75 an hour, but it wasn't about the money. I got to hang out with Mike. We had a lot of fun. Such great memories. Dr. Jerry's able assistant, Mary, well, she made sure we got our checks each and every week. We did everything from fixing the barn, weed eating, to running errands for Miss Jean. On those trips to the camp for a little work, we often got to see Heidi, Amy Marcello, Laney Barlow, and others all dressed in bikinis for the beach. Yep, I would have worked for free on those trips. Dr. Jerry's barn also served as the launching pad for the band Bandit. Practices were held in that barn. I was working audio before Barry Fazio became the go-to audio guru. What a time and memories from that old barn. And if you had the privilege of going to the house a lot, which I did, then you knew who Odile was. Odile was a big deal. As Miss Jean gave her carte blanche, she had the green light on anything that had to do with the kids, including discipline. However, if she were alive today, I think she might enlighten us on some of the kids and some of the episodes. Now, Dr. Jerry was not always that pat you on the back kind of guy. If you screwed up, he was going to let you know that you screwed up. And as I mentioned before, Dr. Mike Haydel and I worked the summers for him. We took it upon ourselves to impress Dr. Jerry one day. He was making his rounds, and in the barn, they had an old termite-eaten area, and we were going to fix it. We cut the lumber, painted the outside to match red, and we could not wait to impress Dr. Jerry when he came home. He then pulls up. We intercept him and bring him to the barn. Naturally, we thought we were going to get a big attaboy when he saw our great work. Well, he looks at it, and he did say, that's nice, but then he delivers the kill shot. Did y'all use treated lumber on the inside of the facade? Mike and I look at each other and reluctantly say, no, sir. Well, naturally, he made us do it over again with treated lumber. Lessons learned. But in true Dr. Jerry style, he would later come out and tell us how good we were doing on other chores. He really had a soft heart under that big surgeon facade. 1982, after I purchased my new large video camera, the Nutri-Man movie idea came after I was filming at Dr. Jerry's duck camp. The nutria were all over the place, and it occurred to me that what would happen if somehow a man in a nutria genetic faux pas would create oversized nutria running the marsh and killing people. That's where Nutri-Man was born. On another occasion, after I painted my Mustang to red, I could not wait to show Dr. Jerry the new Martin Folse look. When he came out of the house, Mike Haydel and I were standing there waiting for his reaction. And he said, "Hey, boy, you went from urine yellow to rectum red." Spoken like a true surgeon. By now, you really get the picture. I spent plenty of time at Dr. Jerry and Miss Jean's house. I knew every nook and cranny of the house. I knew every part of the roof, the barn, and bamboo in the back where we would carve out our hiding places. Over the years, I never forgot the special treatment and the special welcome that I, along with others, received from Dr. Jerry and Miss Jean. And over those years, I would make it a point to bring Dr. Jerry some of my homegrown okra, tomatoes, cucumbers, or anything else that he may enjoy. My dad used to bring him veggies, so it was only keeping tradition alive. But don't kid yourself. Before those days, Dr. Jerry, he had a big garden also in his backyard. He was pretty good at a lot of things. But fast forwarding, maybe it was just a small token to let him know how much the Folse family appreciated his generosity over the years. When I was privileged to reign as King of Homeless in 2011, I was quite shocked to hear and see Dr. Jerry in the back of the Civic Center as he joined forces with Mr. Ronnie Haydel and Dickie Fake, traditional two that dressed the king. Well, Dr. Jerry joined in on that occasion, and it was during that time that he expressed to me that he felt I was part of the family and he wanted to be a part of the dressing of the king. That was special, and we shared many great moments that night at the Civic Center, including a few "hey boy" expressions.
had to come see my boy.
My boy right here.
That's right. Boy. I gotta come see my boy.
My second dad right here.
I'm coming to help Ronnie.
Now, many people have heard me over the years, when I see Dr. Jerry, that I always greet him with, "Hey, boy." And he always says, "Hey, boy," back. But like I said, he was a second father figure in my life. And I'm sure a lot of you watching this program. But on a small footnote, after Hurricane Ida, his house took a major hit after 3 large trees came crashing down on the roof. 3 gaping holes in the roof with water pouring in. The house was a mess. Dr. Jerry had to be moved from the home by his family. And trust me, he would have stayed, but it was the right thing, the thing that needed to be done. They had to move him out the house. His health was not good, and he needed around-the-clock care. So, discussions started about selling the house. Dr. Jerry was part of those discussions. And I was visiting Dr. Jerry one day when Pat and I walked outside, and he told me they had decided to sell the house. Pat also told me that he really had wanted to keep the house, but he knew it was too much. And that's when it hit me. After getting approval of Dr. Jerry and all 9 kids, I purchased the home. Each and every week, I had a conversation with Dr. Jerry about what the plans were, how the renovations were coming. He loved being briefed on the progress of the house. After all, it was so much a part of him. On one occasion, we severed a water line in the backyard, and I could not find the water meter. We had brought in so much dirt to repair holes from trees falling that it somehow covered the water meter and we lost it. So I called Dr. Jerry on his cell phone and asked him where the water meter was. And he simply said, "Take 20 steps from the highway, mark that point, and then go to the driveway, and then walk towards that point, and where they intersect is where the water meter is going to be." He was dead on. In the end, his body gave out, but he was still mentally sharp. On the afternoon before he passed, I FaceTimed Pat and Dr. Jerry. Heidi was also present as they watched me walk through some of the updates on the home. Now, unlike the barn years ago, this time I got a thumbs up. In my own little way, I was able to give Dr. Jerry a little gratification at the end of his long life. And after all, he did so much more for me and many of you over the years. I never got a bill for the lunches I ate at their house. I never got a bill when we spent time at the duck camp. He never sent Mom or Dad or anyone else a bill for calling on us with house calls when the kids were sick. Never sent Dad a bill for materials to fix the camp. He was one of a kind. He was gentle, kind, to go along with the toughness and the drivenness of his life. He was a great dad to all of his kids. He was a great husband. He was a great friend to many who are watching this editorial now. On Wednesday, you will hear Dr. Larry Haydel, his son, eulogize his father at St. Francis. There will be some serious stories in the eulogy, I'm sure, but I bet Larry is loaded up with some funny stories that we should not forget. We are all sad now, but in time, the sadness and grief will be replaced by, remember when Dr. Jerry did this?
So tell me your favorite Martin story.
Oh, he got too many.
Martin, I thought my kids were crazy. I got 4 sons. He's my 5th son, and he was the craziest of all. That's all I can tell you.
So many stories, so many colleagues of him in the medical field can say that. I can see it now. Dr. Jerry, Dr. Bobby, Mr. Ronnie, my dad, Mr. Curtis, Mr. Ray, Don Coyle, Mr. Frank, Mr. Swoboda. There's so many more. Organizing a fishing rodeo in heaven. However, with one caveat. Remember the name of that rodeo I mentioned early? One little blank would have to be changed because Miss Jean would not allow that rodeo in heaven to be called the same thing it was on earth. Now, if you don't know what I mean, ask one of the children and they will explain. So now, Miss Jean, Michelle, you've got him back now. You've got your work cut out for you. Good luck with that. Rest in peace, Dr. Jerry.